Number one Vancouver against number four Austin. That is the matchup on Saturday. I'm looking forward to this one. What about you?
I can't understand how anybody couldn't look forward to this one, considering what's on the line.
Well, the MLS people who said that was not one of the three most watched matches of the weekend.
I think that's
Chicago
complete.
Miami is one of those.
I mean, this is the duel for first in the West. It's the duel for first in the Supporter Shield standings. I mean, mathematically
Hold on,
speaking,
back up.
Phil,
Okay.
mathematically speaking, we talk about math a
Run
lot.
me through the mouth. Okay.
All Austin has to do, admittedly, this is a little bit of a steep hill to climb. Austin has
Okay.
to win by over 5 goals. San Diego has to lose to Colorado. Minnesota has to
Uh-huh.
lose to Toronto in the West. And then in the East, St. Louis beats Columbus, Chicago draws or beats Miami, New York City draws or beats Philly, Montreal, who are at the bottom of the East table, either beat or draw Charlotte, and DC beats or draws Cincy. That's all that has to happen for Austin to end up at the top of the Supporter Shield race at the end of this game on Saturday. That's
So you're
all that
telling me there's
needs.
a chance.
Yes. Yes.
But only a chance, right? So
Mathematically a
I guess
chance.
there's a lot of ways to watch Austin FC and watch the other teams around them.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, oh yeah, shut up, oh yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Yeah, hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast. We talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. And in my house, there's now an Ivy League emergency. My child is going to Yale. I have to get a lot of Yale gear. Moisés, are you going to join me in being a Bulldog / Eli's fan?
I barely cared about college sports rivalries and that sort of thing when I was in college 20 something years ago.
You went to an actual good football school.
Yeah, but I grew up in Texas, so a good football school, kind of like going, I grew up with Friday Night Lights, North Texas football. I don't know
Mhm.
what I was going to get that was different or better in college other than bigger budgets and more waste. I don't know. People crucify me for it, but yeah, I went to Florida State. Sure, I went to one game the entire time I was there. Yeah, it was still American football.
I have a degree from Texas. It's actually an MFA, so it's kind of the least football-y of any UT degree. I have not been to a UT game yet, ever in my life. So I've been to a handful of Washington games, which is my alma mater, but no UT games as of yet. But might go to that Yale Harvard game. Who knows? Of course, I am wearing red today. I should not be doing that. I should be wearing blue. I have a blue hat on, close enough. Anyway, so college football talk over. Let's go ahead and move to pro soccer. Basically, MLS, which still as of now is not going to move to a fall to spring schedule, as we who live in broily Austin summers are welcoming.
Yeah,
But
and
unfortunately, no.
we got to note that they're going to continue to look at the possibility of doing it as early as 2027 after talking to key stakeholders. And I think two of those key stakeholders are Lionel Messi and his agent, and also probably some of the northerly teams that would like somebody else to be on the hook for facility expansions that people like Saputo doesn't want to actually pay for, as he doesn't want to pay for a lot of things.
Like DPs.
Yeah. It feels to me like I think there's an interesting corollary to look at in the J League, who made this transition and is still in the process of making this transition there in Japan. It's not as simple as, okay, just flip it one year to the next. So to some extent, I have a little bit of, well, I would rather they think this through rather than just rush it through on the back of World Cup. And because of the unique structure of the league, instead of having owners, they really have shareholders, and you have interesting things to balance when it comes to that equation. So I wouldn't say that the door is all the way closed on shifting to the international calendar. I think the league probably really wants to do that shift. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of making sure that they do it in a way that doesn't result in some immediate pushback.
Right. And the good news is they will revisit it in the summer at the Board of Governors meeting, which is going to be in Austin, coinciding with the All-Star game, when Austin is a unpleasant kiln, which will viscerally, painfully remind everybody of why we might not want to play games in the summer.
You would think that that would be a good example, and we'll see which clubs that have the juice to stick to their guns, stick to which guns and how. It's an interesting time to be following the league. It's an interesting time to see what people are saying inside and outside the league when it comes to the prospect of it having to be more competitive with the bigger US leagues. Let's be honest.
Mhm.
Are you going to compete with the schedule of sports other than Major League Baseball in terms of the way that your calendar's aligned?
Mhm. Right. That is definitely a consideration. So didn't know that we were going to get in here. One thing that we do want to touch on, one thing that we did know we were going to get definitely in our outline, Riley Thomas now a first team player, as
We
we
did know,
predicted.
Phil, we did know this. We did know this. We felt this coming. We've
Mhm.
been saying it, we've been saying it for weeks. This kid, he's headed for that supplemental deal,
23-year-old
and
kid,
he got that 23-year-old teenager, Riley Thomas. He
first
got
names.
that supplemental deal. And I think richly deserved. I feel like of the guys that are in line for something like that coming up, especially looking Ilya being out with a hamstring injury that they have said is not major, but it's big enough for him to actually be on the injury report now. Maybe we see those call ups happen for Irvin Torres.
Mhm.
There are more complicated things that go into a supplemental deal getting put together for somebody who's still under 18. Though look at Kevin Sullivan. It's not that it's impossible. Look at Diego Fagundes. It's got precedent in the league. But I think there's a lot of thoughtful consideration that goes into, are the responsible people in positions of responsibility making the right responsible choice in terms of advancing a young player's career. Irvin is probably the one I would earmark as the next most likely to see something like that happen.
Mhm.
Even though, sure, they could shore up some more in the back line, I feel like they're going to be looking to fill a senior roster spot for that Leo Väisänen vacancy more than they're going, you know what? I think it's time to bring Tony Gomez into the senior stuff, into the senior
Right.
ranks. He's still got call ups that can be used, but we'll see what the hell month of May brings. We say all this
Mhm.
now. 3 weeks from now, things could be radically different.
And in the meantime, the break glass in case of emergency enclosure that is housed around Riley Thomas will be wheeled to a sideline near you, or actually in BC Place in Vancouver for the Saturday's matchup against Vancouver. And we've been talking about this one a little bit because obviously, first in the West, Vancouver's a team that we pay attention to anyway, because last year it was because of Vanni Sartini and his sideline magnetism, shall we say. But now, completely different manager, much the same team, but minus a few pieces, most notably one time destined for Austin FC player Fafa Pico, now playing with Inter Miami, but Ryan Gault's still there, injured though. And of course, Brian White, non DP, still there. Andres Cubas, who, as you've noticed, Moisés is dropping off a little bit from maybe years past. And then Jaden Nelson, who has come on really strong to start off the season, but is possibly still out with a hamstring injury as he was last week. So your thoughts heading into this? I mean, again, top team in the West, not a lot of people would have predicted that. It makes a certain amount of sense when you just look at how the season has shaped up so far. And they're also doing well in CONCACAF Champions Cup, which I still can't resist calling CONCACAF Champions League because that's what I have known for years. But at the same time, yeah, so they are progressing in that continental tournament and they have a lot of really tough games coming up. And maybe arguably the first one of those is against the number 4 team in the West, who
Well,
has
Phil,
been
I've
playing
got
lights out defense.
breaking news right
Oh
on the
boy.
heels
Okay.
of us mentioning Irvin Torres. The club, as we record
Ooh.
this, have revealed that he has signed a short-term agreement with the first team and will be making the plane to Vancouver. So,
Oh,
an additional wrinkle. Sure looks like Irvin Torres is going to be on the bench for the first team going up north. And
nice.
on that super weird turf, I think it would be great if we saw him actually play some minutes because he's got the legs, he's got those young muscles that have not gone through the levels and layers of injuries that a bunch of the older guys have. I think he could surprise some people if he gets playtime up in Vancouver. But either way, looks like that process of working through his short-term agreements has begun, and I expect he
Mhm.
will probably
Okay.
get some more going through the month of May, if anything, just to break glass for teenager in case of emergency. To the
Right.
points that you were just bringing up about Vancouver and their setup, we were talking yesterday, and one of the things that will happen on occasion is we will just get on a tear texting each other because we can't help ourselves. The hyper focus
Right.
will not leave us alone. And as much as we had been saying the way that things were shaping up, that it looked like this was about as ideal of a timing that Austin could be going for the away leg in Vancouver. That's only become more true. As I was
Yep.
digging through Rios's stats, it looks like he's been getting limited time. I couldn't find on
Mhm.
their injury report whether he has been injured and is coming back from an injury, but based on the minutes he's played recently, he only just started a game again for them in the most recent CONCACAF Champions Cup match and then went out
Right.
just after halftime. And before that was coming on as a second half sub. If they are a bit thin at the front or a bit underpowered at the front and they're going on a couple days rest after a 2 hour drive to a remote airport and then a 5 hour flight back to Vancouver, on top of the injuries that they're contending with, on top of the fact that I feel like stats wise, and I'm not always the one harping on the stats, you look at Kubas and I feel like he has fallen off in form based on the stats he's put up. No assists, no
Right.
goal contributions, no key
Right.
passes to speak of, a couple maybe,
Right.
but a very
And not the
good
defensive numbers you would expect from him either.
no, but good pass percentage numbers. Like he is a
Sure.
connecting piece in their midfield for them this season, but he's also yellow card prone and he's only got 2 yellows for the season, one in their match day 1 game and one in their most recent league play game. So he's not close to suspension. But if we want to call him the Danny Pereira of the Vancouver Whitecaps, he has been card prone. He has served suspensions as recently as last season. I feel like the tactical hounds of Austin FC are probably looking at him as a provocable target in their midfield. This is a guy that they can provoke into card danger early. And even though he is not producing a whole lot, if they can provoke this guy into a first yellow and then a second yellow, that is a strong way to take care of a team that, even if they are on limited rest, is not super eager to have Austin come to BC Place and show them up.
Mhm.
And I feel like we were talking about what are Sorensen's options here? Is he going to rest some of his starters? Or is he going to play his starters knowing that this will be the last time they have a week to rest between this match and their next match against St. Louis?
Right.
And I feel like he has 2 bad choices. I don't think that either
Mhm.
one is going to be especially good for this Whitecaps team, who did well, didn't have to dig super deep. They didn't have to go to extra time and PKs against Pumas, but they did have to play a midweek match at Elevation, and that does stuff.
And they did have to pull up a stoppage time goal just to extend their run. And then, of course, week after next, they have to think about midweek matches because they are going to have that 2-leg series against Miami for the CCC semifinal. And of course, I mean, again, from Austin's perspective, I would much rather, as an Austin player, face a team without Ryan Gauld and Jaden Nelson than one
Yeah.
that has those players. Reached out to the third sub. We're going to do a foreign exchange with them. That's going to go up later today as you were hearing this on Saturday. Hopefully, you're hearing this on Saturday. And Sam Adekugbe, he may get some time. He has been training. He may come in as a sub to provide kind of some speed and guile late in that match. But they have been plagued by injuries. And
Yeah.
again, if you are going to, it's similar to what they got with LAFC a few weeks ago. If you were going to want to face a team like that away, Austin is getting them at a really fortuitous time, like they did with LAFC. Again, I don't know that I want to necessarily predict a win given kind of where Vancouver's been, but I do feel a lot better about this match coming now than, say, if they were a full strength team on the other side of CCC, say in August or September.
And you bring up Adekugbe, and I feel like it's good for them, sure, that he is coming back in off injury, but Austin definitely wants to face a key player like that who is not at 100%, who is getting back into the swing of things rather than being fully back and match fit and able to start. So there are so many variables in play that are favorable. You mentioned what they've got coming up, and just to spell it out for folks, thinking about it from Jesper Sorensen's perspective, they've got away at St. Louis next weekend, and then Miami midweek 2 days after that, and then Minnesota on the other side of that on the weekend, and Miami 4 days again after that. And then 3 days after that Miami second leg, they play RSL.
Right.
He's got to be looking at this as, do we absolutely have to go super hard and risk re-aggravating injuries, creating new injuries, losing a player to red card suspension for fouls? Because the number one thing that Kubas has been doing well is leading his team in fouls with 12 fouls. He is the foul machine at Vancouver.
Right.
And if Austin is not already tactically planning to go after this guy, I think they need to revise who's looking in the tape room and who's looking at opposing stats, because
And
it seems like a golden opportunity.
Yeah, and the thing, we don't know what Sorensen necessarily is going to do because he's fairly new. Vanni Sartini, we know he would just quote Marx. There would be some wisdom that he would find in some socialist text that would allow
We will
him
seize
to
the means of goal production.
something like that. Yeah, exactly. So again, this new coach, he's been successful so far. I think Vancouver people are pretty happy with him, given that I'm sure that they were not terribly happy when Sartini was dismissed, because that was a little bit of a surprise. And he had done fairly well. He had gotten them to multiple playoff appearances. Again, they were not rolling with as many kind of key DP pieces as other teams were, and they were still doing decently well. Of course, LAFC being an Achilles heel for them, but still, I think, performing fairly well. But again, if you extrapolate what they're doing right now to the end of the season, they're going to be in pretty prime position, although they also have, in, I believe it was last year, were first or second in the West and then dropped all the way to eighth by the end of the season. So it's no guarantee that where they are now is where they're going to stay. We're going to talk about Austin in that kind of sphere in a little bit here. But anything else that you want to say about the upcoming matchup? Again, it's a 6:30 start time. It's a weird one.
Yep.
If it was an East Coast game, that would be normal. But of course, Vancouver's on the West Coast. It's going to be a 4:30 start time locally. So it's gonna butt up against some of the other Eastern Conference games. But again, it is a trip out west where I am not up till past midnight in a post-match media conference. So I am very, very happy about that. I am much better with that being at 9 p.m. than at midnight, I would have to say.
Well, before we dig into some Austin stuff, including talking a little bit about the other side of that match, we should mention that because the game is an away game, there is another Los Verdes watch party. This episode of Emergency Podcast brought to you by the wonderful people at Los Verdes, who bring the good times and the good vibes. We did not accept a check for saying this. We are doing this out of furthering the good vibes and the good energy. Match time 6:30. The watch party is going to be out at Southern Heights Brewing Company at 6014 Techni Center Drive.
All sorts of sense, because clearly when you're going north and west, you want to reach the Southern Heights.
Precisely. And Southern Heights is notable, and this isn't even in the copy that they gave us, but one of the saviors of the Austin TIFO effort, where so many times lacking an available space or an available space getting canceled at the last minute, they have come through in ways for the Austin fan base that folks within the TIFO organization leadership have said time after time that so many of these TIFOs would have been in serious danger. The Bobby Hill TIFO invoking the Copa Tejas last season, the current TIFO that'll be raised presumably at the LA Galaxy match, of which details are completely top secret and confidential. Southern Heights has helped enable a kind of two location situation that you'll hear more about on the other side of it actually getting raised, that really made a substantive difference in terms of being able to continue the now, I think, tradition of Austin being one of, if not the absolute leading supporters group TIFO operation in the league. I think that's something that even Columbus fans would begrudgingly agree is the case. Show Southern Heights some love. There's some great food options on site there. It's an indoor setup with multiple TVs. It's all ages, free parking. I mentioned the food, La Taquicardia. If you have not had La Taquicardia, and I don't mean tachycardia, but they're hilarious wordplay.
I have had that
for this taco truck. What if you've had tachycardia? Have tachycardia to salve the wounds of what actual tachycardia is like.
Tachycardia, see a cardiologist.
You should. If you need tacos, see Tachycardia. And there is a drink special for LV members. So if you're an LV member, you're all set. If you're not yet an LV member, guess what? You can sign up literally right now. $35 plus shipping and tax. And the 2025 membership kits should be shipping within the coming days. A very
Nice.
reliable source, who might be myself, told me that recently. The party starts at 5 o'clock, and I saved one of the best things for last. Phil, what comes to your mind as one of your very favorite things to strike up a true carnival atmosphere at one of these watch parties? What is one of the absolutely essential elements that really hits the heartbeat and gets everybody partying?
Would that be La Murga to Austin?
Yes, indeed. La Murga de Austin will be appearing at the watch party. First time this season that they've had one of these real big get-togethers. So head on out to Southern Heights. Party starts at 5, match starts at 6:30. People will be there a little bit early too. I've heard tell of maybe a cut crew stitch and bitch impromptu kicking up in the hours leading up. But great place, great brews and great food, great company. What else could you ask for?
And you know what else? You know what else Southern Heights is?
What do they got?
It's 8 minutes from my house.
There you go.
So I think I'm going to be there. I have to go to a Yale party because I'm that dad now.
Wow, man.
In the afternoon, but I will show up at that party, I believe, and watch there, and then Wi-Fi willing, be able to jump into the post-match press conference from there, or I will bail early because it's only 8 minutes from my house, and if I leave right at the final whistle, I should be back at my house doing the press conference by the time that the press conference actually starts.
The constant Yale references. You're making real Yale people so proud.
4 years of it. Get sick of it, everybody. It's coming.
So let's talk Austin. Let's talk about what kind of form they're in, what kind of state they're in. You just today posted something about the midweek press availability. You've posted some other stuff about where things are at, how things are looking for playoffs. We'll
get to that in a sec. Yeah.
What the first 7 games have meant and everything. So where are we at, Phil? Give us the state of the club.
Well, they've only allowed 3 goals, which is best in the league, thanks to St. Louis blowing their lead in that category to Kansas City over the weekend, which was great, not only because that gave Austin the lead in goals allowed, but also because Kansas City's media team did a very funny Nebraska Furniture Mart reference where they were talking about L-shaped couches for St. Louis on their way out of town, which was one of the better social media posts that I have seen in quite a while. So kudos to the SKC media team for that. But also only 5 goals. And again, that is something that got talked about in the midweek press conference. Nico saying the same things that he did before. Unfortunately, invoking the Wolfian quotes from last year about all the bangers that they are scoring in training sessions, which certainly are replicable in games. And yet.
What if those guys save those beautiful goals for actual games?
Yeah.
What if they are starved of those beautiful practice goals? And maybe that focuses their mind. If they're denied the goal on the practice pitch, maybe that, look, I'm not a coach. I'm far from an expert. Anybody will tell you, especially the people who loathe me. But maybe try that. Maybe don't let them score the practice goals.
Our goal is a finite resource like fossil fuels, which we are apparently returning to.
The goals may be on tanker ships stranded in the Pacific Ocean as we speak. That could be what's happening.
Is the key to goal making beautiful, clean coal?
I can't believe you said that, Phil. I can't. Something has got to stoke a fire. Something has got to light a fire and catch. And now I'm making dangerous wildfire references, Phil. Look what you've done to me. But breaking the dam open is the thing that's got to happen. And I feel like as much as fans may not want to hear it, I don't know that dam is going to necessarily burst up on the weirdo turf of BC Place.
I was just going to say.
I feel like everybody can survive another 1-0 win because 3 points is 3 points, or a 0-0 draw. And as much as I was joking a bit about, well, here's all Austin has to do to be first in the West and top of the Supporter Shield standings. Even though I don't know that that's going to hinge on exactly this one game is going to say a lot about momentum going into the next stretch of games, where I feel like the Golasso Fest dam breaking open stands a much better chance of happening against LA Galaxy at home the following weekend. And it feels to me like if we see multiple goals, if we see the traveling fans who crossed an international border to go up to BC Place and see them play, especially so if we get a multi-goal game, then I feel like that LA Galaxy game, we are looking at them having the momentum, having the mentality necessary for something like that 2022 season opener against Cincinnati, where they just go absolutely nuts on a team that is in clowning position, which is where LA Galaxy very firmly find themselves at the moment.
Right. And I'm gonna ask Maya Yoshida to not necessarily rush back from injury because if you saw Diego Luna's 2 goals last week in the absence of Maya Yoshida and the substitute center back that was in his place, you will see the possibilities for scoring on a Yoshida-less Galaxy defense, let's just say.
Yeah, what was that we were saying about Swiss cheese defenses when it was Austin?
Hmm.
Feels like
Yep.
feels like that has transitioned to a different club of late.
It's weird that
Um,
you hollow out an entire midfield and the team becomes worse.
yeah, I don't know how that happens. Somebody will have to show it to me on a chart somewhere or figure out
Right.
the stats that explain it because I just don't get it.
That can be arranged. I'm sure we'll do something like that next week. So I did want to visit though, speaking of playoffs and speaking of where Austin is, I did an article on Tuesday, just something that was gnawed at me a little bit when I saw the start that Austin was having and just wondering, okay, can they make the playoffs based on getting 13 points in that first 7 games? And as it turns out, in the last 2 seasons, of the teams that were in playoff position after those 7 games, which is about 20% of the season gone, 7 of those 9 teams made the playoffs. If you get in that position anywhere between 1 and 9, you have a pretty good chance of staying above that playoff line and getting into the playoffs since of course 2023 was the year that they went to maybe too many playoff teams with 9 in each conference. But here's the weird thing. So in 2023, Austin was ninth after 7 games. In 2024, Austin was eighth after 7 games. They did not make the playoffs either of these years. They're the only team that was in playoff position those past 2 seasons and then ended up on the other side of that. Of course, this year things are a lot better, right? So they are in fourth. In 2022, they were in second, 4-1-2, very close to the 4-2-1 record that they have now. So if you think of the season being more like 2022, given that they are in a kind of home hosting position, or at least home hosting a series, since we have weird best of 3 series now in the first round, they're within that top 4 tier, rather within that kind of bottom 5 tier in the playoff matches. So they're in the playoff places, rather. So they are at this point, again, in a position where if they maintain what they're doing, and again, they don't have to do a lot, right? So they have to play at about a 1.18 points per game clip the rest of the way. To give you an indication, they played at a 1.15 points per game clip all of 2023, which was pretty terrible. If they do that, they should get to the 45-point mark, which would at least ensure them, in most seasons at least, a run at the playoffs. So again, I think things look pretty good. Again, if you bank points early, that generally works well for you, but there's not any guarantee necessarily that what you do in those first 7 matches of the season carry over to what you do in the remaining 27. And certainly we have seen a little bit of disappointment from Austin the past 2 seasons, but they are in a much better place than they were any of those previous 2 seasons. They're in the best place they've been since 2022.
I feel like the thing I keep coming back to is we've got to look at what the next however many games are like,
Mhm.
especially on the other side of the first 7 matches.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as crazy of a month as May is going to be, I'm
Mhm.
strangely not really that worried about the way that things look. I feel like they've been doing smart rotation with what we
Mhm.
now know is an injury report level injury on Ilie. They're taking care of him. They are making sure that they are not burning him out in advance of what is going to be a challenging season overall, where they're going to need
Right.
every last bit of the depth that they have. And I feel like them being on track, and to Brendan Heinsich's point the other week, doing some of the boring stuff. Now is the time for the
Mhm.
boring stuff because you don't want the exciting stuff to be having to come back from an incredibly improbable deficit of points late in the season. The
Right.
more they can pick away at things, the more away matches they can get a point out of, rather than conceding a point at the death, as became the trend over the last 2 years. That's that is a marked improvement when it comes to playoff form. And I feel like, as much as Dax McCarty on MLS Wrap Up wants to say that you don't go to Austin to watch goals, I feel like I do watch Austin to watch goals, because when it does happen, when that dam breaks, it'll be glorious. And if it doesn't happen, I'm just watching for the goals. Put me up on charges for doing the wrong thing. Because when it does happen, you remember those glorious moments from 2022.
Mhm.
Imagine that kind of performance when not overperforming, but performing to the standard of what the roster is capable of doing. Uzuni is only getting to, I think, his fifth full match being
Mhm.
played as a starter. There are elements of this that are still cohering, and I feel like this next stretch of games going through May is going to either reveal patience paid off, or where the holes still are and what they need to shore up.
The thing is, Uzuni and Vasquez are vastly underperforming their XGs right now. Vasquez has a XG of 2.7 so far this season. Uzuni has one of 1.9. I think each have one goal. So obviously, that's, if
Do
you're
they know?
looking at
Phil,
just kind of,
Phil, do you think
I'm
they
sure,
know?
I'm sure they know. I'm sure they know. But the other thing that's interesting, again, to drill into some stats, if you looked at things at the start of the season, you would have said, okay, first 7 games, pretty easy, a lot of points to be gotten. I think Austin's done pretty well in that department. Next 7 games, all against playoff teams from last year, but there's been some drop off with some of those teams, most notably the Galaxy. Looking at points per game, the teams they played so far have an average of 1.36 points per game. The teams that they're playing in this block of the next 7, the 6 teams, because they are playing Vancouver on the other side of this next 7 at home, 1.4. So there's not a big discernible difference between the teams they played so far in terms of strength of schedule and what they're facing. On paper, just kind of given last year, given the results, given the teams like Atlanta might worry you, but they're actually having some difficulties putting together everything that we figured that they would be putting together. And again, this could be another kind of fortuitous part of the season where they don't want to necessarily face an Atlanta team firing on all cylinders in September and October, but facing an Atlanta team in May is just fun.
And my thoughts go to the second team for just a moment. Not that there's a
Okay.
whole lot to be
As
about.
they always do.
Not to delve too much into previewing tonight's match. The first team having Riley Thomas and Irvin Torres on the plane secretly. I'm assuming they hid them from the social media cameras as they were boarding the plane, so as to not tip hands, as it
Yep.
were. But the
Sure.
two of them being with the first team in Vancouver means they are not available for the second team match against reigning Next Pro champions North Texas tonight. And North Texas, who
Mm.
have lost some of their better players to first team contracts. This is maybe a trend that it would be good to see more of with Austin, where the second team's availability suffers because they got guys that are too good to be playing those second team minutes. To me, that feels smart. To me, that feels like that is what that third division league down grouping is for. And
Mhm.
I feel as passionate of a following as the second team has grown to have, the team within the club that has a star of the crest. I feel like fans of the second team should be happy about seeing this kind of thing, because to a point raised by Roto, this is the kind of quality that it was a vast gap between MLS and MLS Next Pro. And the closing of that gap with some very smart, let's pick up this promising player from Europe, let's pick up this promising guy who is not on the next Ronaldo kind of tip sheets, but is
Right.
a very capable player who can fill those roster depth holes. That's what they need more than anything. Not just challenging for Open Cup in addition to MLS Cup, but looking ahead to the future to what the 2026 season is going to be like and beyond.
Right, right. Yeah. And again, certainly thinking about second team. We talked about this before. We don't know this now, but we will know this by the time that this actually goes up on Saturday morning. We'll know how they fared against North Texas and what the courses that sets for their season. I am curious, just going back to like second team, first team things. I don't anticipate that Riley Thomas is going to necessarily be employed by the first team a lot. So he's still going to be, for most intents and purposes, a second team player. But I am wondering what that kind of that kind of, again, that status, that endorsement, getting that supplemental contract, knowing that he is good enough to at least be breaking into that echelon, what that's going to do in terms of his confidence and what that might do and how that might translate to the rest of the team.
Yeah, I think there's the knowing that most of his minutes are still going to get played on the second team, him notably being absent for key matches for the second team will really just be opportunities for other guys coming up to step up and show what they're capable of. And knowing that there is a regular core of second team guys that are training in with the first team, not out of direct necessity, but because the quality is there. And
Mhm.
also, yes, the necessity of roster depth. It's good to see that change and that progress happen for the club, which I don't think gets enough play. I think it's something that people are used to seeing that because over the last couple of years they just didn't have enough players. And seeing it now turning a corner into these guys are good enough, they're earning the minutes, they're going to get the minutes if not in the actual matches and from call-ups, they're getting it on the practice ground. And that's seeing the second team feeding the first team in the way that it is very much designed to be.
And then just from here, obviously, North Texas game is big. What's jumping out to you on the Verdo's calendar going forward?
The most important thing that has happened for the second team of late is that the league commentators have fully adopted the Phil West endorsed Verdos moniker. I feel like this is because they want to be on the right side of history. But that aside, in terms of what's actually going on with the second team, they have a bit of a weird calendar. They play North Texas multiple times, not just twice. So there's the match tonight, and then in June, they play away at North Texas, and they play at home against North Texas again in August. So they don't exactly get to have the kind of clean Copa Tejas convenient number of matches against their in-state rivals. You look at the rest of April, and they're going to play away against Houston Dynamo when the first team goes there later this month.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So there is not a Copa Tejas, but maybe a Copita Tejas month for people to pay attention to. On the other side of this, they are playing the Whitecap second team next weekend away, while the first team's playing LA Galaxy here at home. On the other side of that away game against Houston Dynamo 2 at the beginning of May, they're going to be playing the Scared Money Derby at home against Sporting Kansas City 2. Granted, Benny Feilhaber is not the coach there anymore, but Benny gave birth to something that will live on into infinity,
Yeah,
which
very
is the most hilarious cross-state rivalry in Next Pro.
Is there a fun Whitecaps too nickname, like white beanies?
The Snowcaps, maybe? I don't know. I'm just thinking of movie theater candy now. But yeah, the most interesting thing to me over the next couple of months is that within a 2 month span, the second team is going to play North Texas and Houston Dynamo 2 twice each, home and away in both cases.
Right.
And those are not always the easiest of matches. Dynamo 2 is in a weird space, as Dynamo as a club is of late. So yeah, we'll see how things go. It's going to be an interesting couple of months, especially while the first team is potentially going to be pulling away some guys in the interest of roster depth when they have a much crazier May than the second team does.
That is our Verdo's report for the week. And we are about done, but we have one more bit of business because this is a Whitecaps game, and the number one Austin Whitecaps fan lives in our house. Let's get number one Whitecaps fan, Emmeline West, into the booth.
Fun finger.
Oh, you need your foam finger? Hold on. So, Emmy, tell me first of all, are you looking forward to this game?
Yes.
What kind of things do you think are going to happen in this game? I don't know how closely you've been following the Whitecaps this season because you've been very busy with your budding improv career, and school has been pretty consuming this year. But what can you tell me about the Whitecaps? Vanni Sartini is no longer there, but Jasper Sorensen's there and seems to be doing really well as a coach. They're in first place in the West. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that they recently won the game, I think.
Yep. They've recently won quite a few games.
My prediction for the game tomorrow is thinking about who would win. It's a hard choice because Austin FC got like better.
Yep, they did get better. And Vancouver's got some players that are hurt.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Ryan Gauld's out. Jaden Nelson's out.
Hmm.
Their goalkeeper has been about as good as Brad Stuber. They each have 4 clean sheets. That means they haven't let a goal in the game.
So do we have a score prediction, Emmy?
You got a prediction?
Since these two teams are pretty good,
Yeah.
I think the Whitecaps could win because like Austin FC like just got better, like and the Whitecaps were like good for a long time.
Okay.
I've been talking about the Whitecap Cougars since I was young.
Yep. You sure have. It is in Vancouver too. It's on their weird turf. So you want to give us a score?
What?
You want to give us a score?
Oh, this is gonna be hard.
Just give us something.
I feel like
No one's gonna check.
I thought you're like asking me like how what do you like
Do you think 1-0 Vancouver? Do you think 0-0 tie? Do you think 1-1? Do you think 2-1 Vancouver?
one property?
Okay, so 2-1. So there
2-1.
will be goals,
2-1
Just not-
Vancouver wins.
just not as many Austin goals as we would like. Okay. Anything else? Anything else you think is going to happen?
I think Dad's gonna be in the giant Amazon box like he usually is.
No, actually, I'm not going to be in the Amazon box because the game's going to be in Vancouver. I'm going to be in the Amazon box. That's what she calls the press box in about a month when they play again. Yeah. And that's a game you could go to theoretically.
They may let me in the giant Amazon box.
We will see.
I hope
How would everybody feel about an 8-year-old reporter in the box? Well, not quite 8, 7, almost 8.
I feel
do we
like
think?
it would bring some renewed energy and vigor to the proceedings. I
I do too.
don't think people are quite as lively as they could be.
Right. Except for the USAC ref guy. I would like to
True.
see Emmy deal with the USAC ref guy. Yeah, you know what? So we can, every game, there's a guy that says, "You suck, ref." And like he's directly under us. So like the first bad call that happens, we hear him. So kind of,
me.
yeah, good. Like earn too sometimes. Definitely we saw that last week, Drew Fisher. A lot of people would have concurred with that point. Anything else you got, Emmy? You saving it all for your improv concert on Sunday?
Do you guys want me to say swear word
Sure.
or say it? Swear word.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Emmy.
Bye.
Good work. All right. Okay. Cub reporter Emmy West on the scene, predicting a 2-1 Whitecaps win. We'll see if she's right. So,
All right. Watch
She may
party
be.
at Southern Heights, 8 minutes from Phil's house.
Absolutely.
Nobody follow him home.
Yep.
Don't be creepy.
right.
And then we'll be back in Austin next week for LA Galaxy.
Oh, yeah. Which is going to be not only a 12:45 game, but very possibly a goal fest.
Very
We said that
possibly.
about the Portland game. We were wrong. But
and that
one
well,
of these
that one we
weeks,
were
right?
like, it could be. We weren't pushing it as likely. I feel like we're pushing the Galaxy one as it feels like it ought to be, and if it's not, that's a problem.
You do remember what I said like 3 minutes in now.
Yeah.
Said either there's going to be a ton of goals or it's going to be this kind of a game.
Yep.
And
And
it
it was
was
that kind of a
indeed that.
game. Thanks, Phil.
Indeed. Yeah. Sorry. Do what I have to. All right. We will, if you're coming out to Southern Heights, say hi. If you are not, enjoy the game from the comforts of your own home at a sane early start time. And then, of course, we will be up next week previewing what could be a goal fest if we don't have one already on the weird turf against the Galaxy, as aforementioned. And yeah, anything else you got? before we
I'm
go?
all set, man.
Wonderful. All right. Enjoy the week and enjoy the game, and we will see you.
That is like the worst thing I've ever heard in the history of the 7 years that I've been on this planet.